the time.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you all so much for coming to our webinar today, our Financial Fitness Friday. It's our fun little catchy title we have for these little snippets that we're doing for financial wellness. We're going to talk about a lot of different financial concepts today. We got all sorts of different things we're going to touch on, as well as answer a few questions that we received before we started today, as well as open it up for any questions people might have. So we're going to try to keep it a tight 30-40 minutes, but we're going to do our best to fit as much information as we can in there. So thank you all for coming. As people filter in, we're going to do a little bit of just kind of talking about today's webinar session. Jen, if you want to maybe go to the next slide. Very good. We are in webinar mode today, and that means that all of you guys are automatically muted. All your cameras are automatically off, so feel free to have lunch, enjoy, sit back and enjoy and as we talk about this today. If you want to ask any questions, we highly encourage that, but please use the Q&A feature on Zoom. You'll see that on your Zoom taskbar. If you don't see it right away, sometimes Zoom kind of minimizes it. If you hit the circle with the three dots that says more, you should then see the option for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature because chat is currently disabled because we're in webinar mode. But we are going to try to put a couple links in the chat as well to some handy resources. And then just so you know, this presentation is being recorded. This presentation and all of our presentations we actually put up for free on our YouTube page. So you can always follow up on it. Or if you're like, wait, they talked a little bit about credit or this concept today, but I need to know more about that. You can find a full webinar about that one concept on our YouTube for free. So good thing to take a look at. And then we are going to send out a post webinar survey because we always want to try to improve. We're always looking for your feedback and anything like that. So please feel free after this to give us some feedback if you'd like, because we're always trying to improve and we always read the feedback. So thank you very much for being here. I want to do a little intro to our team. My name is Ty Koppelson. I'm here with my boss, Jen Fries, together with our other coworker, Terrence. We are the community engagement team here at the Harvard Federal Credit Union. Our whole job is to get in the community to do these financial educations. We do a lot of charitable giving, volunteer events. We do a lot of tabling. You might have seen this out and about. So we're really involved with the community, and we're really it's really a passion of ours. So and then the other thing I like to say on this slide is that why should you listen to us? And that's because we are actually all certified credit union financial counselors. So we have certification in our role. We do a lot of this type of stuff. We really know what we're talking about, and we have the certification to prove it. So we are going to be leading the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, real quick, the first question we always get is what is a credit union? What is the difference between a credit union and a bank? Well, the primary difference is that credit unions are actually not for profit. And what that means is that we do everything a bank does, all the same stuff, checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, student loans, all the same things. But because we are not for profit, we don't need to make a profit for shareholders. So we don't need to be pushy salesy with our members, our customers. Our primary focus is on helping our community, helping people, and we do that in a lot of different ways. The profit that we do make as a financial institution, we actually reinvest that back into our community and back into our membership in a lot of different ways. For example, we have very few fees, if any, on a lot of the services and products that we have. We generally have better interest rates on our savings accounts as well as lower interest rates on our loans. One thing that people really love that we do is if you have our debit card, we refund all ATM fees automatically. So if you have a debit card with us and you go and you use it at Bank of America or something like that, and that bank charges you a fee, we're going to go ahead and just give you that money back. So that kind of offsets the, I guess, one of the things that we are is we are a smaller footprint compared to some of the bigger banks, right? We only have a few branches. We're only kind of primarily in the Cambridge, Boston area. And so it's harder to like find a branch, but because we are able to refund all ATM fees, you can feel free to get your cash out anywhere you want, and you don't have to worry about the fee for that. So there's a lot of different ways. Another way that we are able to make up for our smaller footprint is that we're actually part of the credit union co-op shared branching network. And what that means is that there's a whole bunch of credit unions that all work together on the shared branching network where you can, if you're traveling, you can go into a whole different credit union in an entirely different state. And as long as they're also on that shared branching network, you can actually access your accounts here at our credit union in a completely different credit union. Because we all kind of work together because credit unions' primary goals is to help each other and to work with the community. So anyway, that's just a little spiel about the credit union and why I think we're really great, because our primary focus is on just helping people. And that's one of the reasons why we do this financial education that we're doing today.
Thanks, Ty. You can join online. We did get a question about how to join the credit union.
Right?
You
Yep.
can join in any of our branches, Harvard Square, One Brigham Circle, which is 1614 Tremont Street. It's our newest branch. Come on in. We also have branches at some of the MGB locations and within Mass General Hospital. So, however it works for you, online or in person, we'd love to have you as a member. Okay. So this presentation is going to cover some of the basics of financial wellness, meaning sort of best practices, what are global suggestions for everybody to have financial wellness. But we do want to acknowledge that money is personal, and what financial wellness looks like for me is different than what it might look like for Ty or for any of you on this webinar. So we do encourage you to take a moment if you can and just write down some of your goals. Writing down your financial goals, you're more likely to achieve them. So what do you think financial wellness would look like for you? And I will say the conventional wisdom is, and we're going to talk a little bit about the order of how you do things, but just to skip ahead a little bit, one of the pieces of conventional wisdom is that you fully fund your own retirement before you save for your kids' college. But because money is personal, and I had some particular things that I felt about that, I did a little out of order. So I cut back my retirement contributions for a while in order to put more into my child's 529 plan, which was for their college. And that was something that, it was a choice for me, and I did it in an informed way where it still wasn't going to prevent me from retiring. It might make it a year or two later, for instance.
Mm.
That's an example of how we're going to tell you sort of best practice steps. You may do them in a different order or want to do something, in your own way, but at least you'll know what the basics are about what is suggested for overall wellness for most people. All right. So the first thing I want to cover is just some like common phrases or vocabulary you might have heard, and you may not have ever thought about what it means, or you might not know what it means. So people will often talk about, well, you have to live below your means. What does that mean? Well, typically what we suggest is that you try to live on 70 to 80% of your salary or your combined household salaries. And then that the other 20 to 30% of your salary is going toward your goals. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. It might be debt repayment, savings, and investing. So that is what that means. You may have also heard the phrase pay yourself first. Pay yourself first is a phrase that has to do with putting money automatically first into your savings, whether that be retirement savings or general savings. So it's the first thing out of your paycheck before you pay anything else. We're going to talk more about that later. So we don't have to go in super detail about it. And I always, on all of these slides, please know there may be times in your life where you can't do this. And we understand that. We're not trying to make you feel bad if you're not at this right now. It's just kind of giving you an idea of what you might want to aim for to make things work better for you. And you might need to think about either adding income, finding, a job with more income, or cutting expenses if you're not able to do that. All right. So one of the number one questions we often get is, what's the order? What's the priority? Is it savings or debt repayment? If I have, large student loan debt or other debt, how do I know how to start? And we're going to go through, the next slide is going to go through best practice about order. So you have that extra 20 to 30%, depending on your circumstances, that you're not spending out of your salary. Where do you direct it and when? So this slide we call the waterfall slide. And the reason is because I want you to picture that water or extra money, that extra 20 to 30% is flowing downhill. So it's starting at the top. You need to cover each one in order. So you don't start at the bottom, you start at the top, covering your monthly expenses. If you're not able to do that, that's when you want to look at, can I take a roommate? Can I do some door dashing or babysitting on the side? Can I get a job that pays better? Increasing your income, decreasing your expenses. So until you're covering your monthly expenses and have that extra. Then your next step is going to be starting an emergency fund and just getting to 1 month of your bills, maybe 1 month worth of your mortgage or your rent in your emergency fund as the first step. Then as you get to that, you're going to keep flowing downhill. You're going to get your employer matches for retirement. If your employer gives you a match where they match $1 that you put in with $1 up to a certain amount, it's typically 4 or 5%, or sometimes less, sometimes 3%. You want to get that money because it's 100% return on your money by matching it. So as soon as you have a small emergency fund, the next step is getting your match. Then you're going to want to start paying off high interest debt. Most credit card debt is high interest. And then other debt, it really depends. Right now in the current climate, I would say aggressively paying off anything like over 6-7% is probably going to be helpful to you. And certainly credit card debt is often 14 to 22%, so you want to pay those off as quickly as possible and then try and pay them off every month once you have it paid off. Then once you have paid off your high interest debt, and remember, this can take months, then you're going to increase your emergency fund, and we'll talk about how to do that. And then only then, once you have a very stable emergency fund, and we'll talk about what that looks like, then you're going to look at investing more money, whether that's within your retirement fund or in general, like investing for other goals. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ty to talk about emergency reserves. Like, where do you put them? What does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something I'm really passionate about, emergency reserves. It seems a little silly, but basically it's the first step towards creating a savings, right? So basically you want to try to be saving some amount of your paycheck, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, kind of a good breakdown for that in a bit. But emergency reserves or emergency savings is like the first thing you really want to be funding from savings. And this is really important because the difference between this and something like doing investing or something like that is that this money you need to have access to, because if there's an emergency or something unexpected or something like that, you want to be able to get your money without any penalty or anything like that. And so your emergency savings, you want to keep it in a high yield savings account. This is something you can find at a lot of different banks or credit unions. We have one. It's really great. I think the interest rate right now, or last time I checked, was about 3.75%, which is really good for savings. You want to be paying yourself first. So when you're saving, when your paycheck comes in, you want to make sure that you take some and put it into savings right away before you take care of some other things, because it's important that you're building this emergency savings. And we talk about kind of how much you want to sort of have in this. It's best to start with maybe 1 month worth of expenses. So basically that means that if for whatever reason you lost your job or something like that, for 1 month at least, you would be able to cover all of your expenses that you had, all of your essentials, all of the most important things to buy that you spend your money on. So that way, in such an emergency, you would be covered for at least 1 month. And then once you get to 1 month of savings, it's recommended to do 3 months. That way you have a bit of a pillow time there. And then some people even recommend 6 months to keep in an emergency savings, just so that way, no matter what's kind of going on, you're going to be okay if a particular situation happens. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure this is accessible, liquid, and insured, which is why we definitely recommend that high yield savings account, because it's in a bank, so it's insured, it's accessible whenever you need it, it's liquid, it's not locked up in any sort of investment or any sort of other different type of account. And as I mentioned, we do offer our Smart Reward Savings, which is our version of the high yield savings, which is really great. But a lot of other institutions will have this as well. So I think last thing I want to say is that a lot of times you might hear people say like, oh, you need to start investing, you need to do all these things, you need to make money with your money, blah, blah, blah. But you really don't want to make sure you're locking up your money or doing any of these things until you have a nice bubble of an emergency reserve, an emergency savings, so you can always access it when you need to, just in case.
Thanks, Ty. I think like it's also, investing has risk, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
absolutely.
want to have your emergency reserve somewhere that don't have risk.
Yeah.
And then I think you were going to tell us a little bit about lifestyle creep.
Yeah, absolutely. So lifestyle creep, this is basically like as you like get a raise or as you start making more money, you start spending more money also to like sort of improve your lifestyle, which, always feels good. But the downside of that is that even if you're like get a new job and you make more money or you get a raise or a promotion or anything like that, you might not feel like you're actually able to save anymore, and you might feel like you're still just struggling to keep your head above the water. And that's because as you make more money, the amount you're spending is also going up. So this can be a really tricky way that you can kind of get trapped, and it's called creep because you generally don't notice it because you're like, oh, like I'm making a little bit more, I'll just go spend a little bit more, or I'll do this a little bit more in my hobbies or something like that. But it's really just something to really keep in mind and take control of, because a really great way to start saving more is to, anytime you get a promotion or a raise or a job or something like that, you were already able to live at a lower sort of cost because you did that before you made more money, right? And so when you get that extra money, you just start saving that extra money instead of spending that extra money. And then sometimes, certainly you might need to spend a little bit more depending on whatever. But the important part is this can be a really painless way to save, because if you were already able to persist at a certain level of kind of lifestyle and then you start making more money, you were already able to do that, right? So then the extra you make, you can just start putting that directly into savings, or at least be able to make much better use of that when it comes to finding different ways to save money or to increase your financial situation.
Yeah, and I think I've done that also with retirement when I wasn't putting
Hmm.
what I wanted to into my retirement. When I would get a raise, I'd put some of it into
Yeah,
that. So I think it's
yeah.
helpful.
It's a really good strategy. You just got to be really mindful of it, because it's so easy to accidentally get stuck in the like, oh, but like now I can spend a little bit more on going out to eat or whatever. And then it's like, oh, well, then suddenly it's a lot harder to pull back when you're already doing those things,
Yeah, or a lot more if you lock yourself into something like a car payment or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
Definitely.
that's kind of the classic example, I feel like. All
Hmm.
right, so now you were going to tell us a little bit about a budgeting strategy that we
Yeah.
saw.
Yeah. So this is one of multiple different budgeting strategies, but this is a great one we like to use as an example for a good place to start. And it's called the 50-30-20 budget. So it's very simple. Basically, this says like all of your money you have in like your monthly expenses, around 50% of that should be reserved for essentials, rent, like car payment if you really need a car, medical expenses. I would even say something like a cell phone bill is probably an essential at this point, because like cell phones are so integrated in today's society. But this is things that like you must pay every month. You must make these bills payments. You must do these things. So that's about 50% of your incoming money should be reserved for those things that you must pay to like maintain your lifestyle, to maintain your, shelter, all of that stuff, really important. And then of the remaining 50%, about 30% of that should be contributed towards like your wants, things you like to do, things you want to do, hobbies, entertainment, going out to eat, clothing, things like that. And then 20% should be used for your savings. And can be multiple different categories of savings. It can be things like your retirement, 401k, the emergency savings, which I talked about. And then once you have like that nice emergency savings saved up, you can then start to consider different sort of investment options, things like that. Now, it's important to pay yourself first, like I mentioned, so that 20% you should try to take that and transfer it to a savings account right away when you get paid is the strategy I use. That way it's accounted for, you're good, you're locked in, it's moved over, and then you can kind of play around with the rest of this. So I think we have a little example. And one thing I really want to point out is that I think we always talk about like ways to save money, ways to lower expenses, ways to be more frugal and things like that. But in this framework, you'll notice 30% is a lot, and that's reserved just for like things you like to do, things you want to do on a monthly basis. Like if we use this example, the $50,000 a year monthly budget, which is about 4,100 monthly. Again, this is just an example. This obviously won't be the same for everybody. But out of that, that's $1,250 a month just for things that are fun, just for things that like going out to eat, going to entertainment, like hobbies, things like that. Like that's a nice chunk of your available funds that you do get to do and like live your life with and have fun with. I always like to make sure we highlight that there's fun with this too. Like when you are able to do a good budget, when you're able to like get good control of your finances, you can still find that room to do the things you love and spend the money on the things you want to do. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree.
And these numbers, like the 50 and the 30 and the 20, won't work perfectly for everybody, and that's okay. Sometimes, if you'll notice, rent, usually for most people, on its own in Boston, would be more than 50% of people's monthly essentials, right? And so you might need to do things like adjusting lifestyle, finding roommates, stuff like that. But there are different ways you can play around with this. But I think the important part about this thinking is just like getting you into a position where you're thinking about the percentages here. And then like maybe you start only with 10% savings because that's what you're able to do. But then once you start doing that, you might realize that you have a little bit of extra want money left at the end of the month. So you can maybe start saving a little bit more, maybe bump that 10 up to 15% and kind of adjust things over time as you figure out what works for you.
I think that's great. Thanks, Ty. You may be watching this, folks, and you may be thinking to yourself, this doesn't account for the fact that I have these big debt payments. I'm trying to deal with debt. And we mentioned the order sort of in the waterfall about paying off high interest debt and, doing that basically as soon as you have your 1 month of emergency savings. But I do want to say you can be doing both at the same time. I always recommend, just from a habit point of view, that there's some amount, even if it's very small, that you're paying every month into savings. So maybe you dial that down to $50 a month, but just something so you always have that budget category. And then maybe the bulk of your whatever you can have as extra money is instead of going that 20% to savings, may need to go for a while to paying off high interest debt. We do always let people know that if you pay the minimum only on your credit card, you do need to pay the minimum. That's the least you can do without getting penalties. But if you only pay the minimum, you will never pay your credit card off. So you do not want to get into a habit where you're only paying the minimum. You need to eventually get to a place where you're able to pay your credit card off every month. And until you get there, you need to figure out a way in your budget so that you're paying more than the minimum. So you're actually chipping away at the principal that you owe. As you pay off one card, direct that same payment amount, roll it right over into the next card until they are all paid off. If you are feeling really alone, like you are drowning in debt, if you are having serious problems with this and it's affecting your mental health and your financial wellness, you are not alone. And we do want to give you a resource for you so that know that any one of us could have been there. There have been times in my life where I was in debt and I had to pay off stuff. So we don't want anyone to leave this webinar feeling like, oh my gosh, this didn't address the realities of my situation. So if you are experiencing a lot of debt, or if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by some of the information we presented, or like, how would I do the budget for me? My situation is different. If you have student loans that you want to take into account and get counseling on that, we have a partnership with a nonprofit organization called Green Path, and they're wonderful. We love Green Path. Green Path is here for you. You do not need to be a member of the credit union to access Green Path. So just by being on this webinar, you can grab this link. I think, thank you. Either Ty or Terrence put that into the chat for us. Thank you. And so you can go onto our website and get the link as well. And you can have free financial counseling. And they're available in multiple languages, extended business hours. And they can also talk you through if you are in a situation where you would be better off in what's called a debt management plan. They can talk to you about that, what the pros and cons would be. And they're not trying to make a profit off you. They are not for profit. And they're great and wonderful. And we highly recommend Green Path if you're feeling alone, like you're struggling, you need someone in your corner. So feel free to access that and take advantage of Green Path. We did have a question ahead of time about managing credit. And I did want to mention that if you are a member of the Harvard Federal Credit Union, that you have access to a service called Savvy Money. And if you haven't gone into it yet, you'll see it on online banking. There'll be a question about whether you want to enroll. You do have to consent to enroll, but it is free. You do not need to give a credit card or anything. It's not one of these things where it's free for a little while. It's free for you to use Savvy Money, and it gives you daily updates about your credit score, what exactly you have out in debt, any reporting or adverse reporting on your credit report. You would know about it immediately. You can do simulators to improve your credit. So we have a whole webinar about Savvy Money, one of these Financial Fitness Fridays. So you can check that out on our YouTube. I won't go any more on about it, but I think Savvy Money is a great tool. And then we just want to touch a little bit on retirement savings. For most of us, retirement savings is our largest investment. because for a lot of us, that is our goal, that we're trying to save up so that we're able to retire and have a great and happy retirement. And so I want to talk about retirement specifically. So again, we talked about getting your employer match and making sure whatever your employer is going to put in for you, you want to make sure you put in the amount to trigger that. So then once you're getting your employer match, then try and get yourself up to at least 6% of your budget that you're paying to retirement. If you do that for your whole life, you will be in a much better position for retirement than if you're trying to catch up later. So even small amounts add up over time. And I can testify to that. I've always worked in nonprofits, and in the beginning when I was younger and had a lower salary, I certainly didn't do very big contributions, but I always tried to get my match and maybe a little bit more. And over time that has added up. And eventually, if you want to get to a point where maybe 15% of your income is going to retirement. If you are able to do that over a period of many years, you will be well positioned to retire. Not everyone's going to need to do this. Depends on your circumstances. You may have other things that you're accessing, like a pension. But that is sort of like your minimum, your maximum kind of that we suggest. However, I do want to acknowledge that there may be people on this webinar who are part of the FIRE movement. FIRE is an idea of financial independence, retire early. Those are people who are typically putting even larger percentages in their retirement. Many of them are high earners, and they know they don't want to do this forever, maybe, or they want to have the independence to choose whether or not they stay in the same job forever. So they might put 50% of their money into retirement or into other investments. So that's a thing. You can Google it if you want to learn more about FIRE. There's a lot of people who blog about it. Comparing yourself against benchmarks. Again, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, and we're going to give you some resources later. This is some best practice advice about by what age should you have how much saved. If you're not there, don't worry, you can catch up later. But this is also a good reality check for some of us, like, I'm not quite where I should be. Maybe I should increase what I'm putting into my retirement. And you'll see some of these are really wide ranges, and it's because, again, money's personal and there's different things that people may be facing in retirement. Like for me, I know I'm going to try and have my house paid off by the time I retire. If you're not, you may need to have a little more saved. So depending if your expenses are going to be a little lower, a little higher in retirement, you know things about your own life to make those determinations. And then once you're hitting all those goals, you may just want to be investing for other reasons, just to start growing your wealth. You may have the extra income to be able to do that. We do have an investment advisor here at the credit union. His name is Dennis Sexton. You can speak to him for free if you just want to check in about your investments. Like, I have these things going on. Is this a good place to have my retirement investments? Or my general investments? Like, does this make sense? He does know a lot about the TIAA system if you're coming from Harvard, because he did work there before he came to us. And Dennis is great, so you can check in with him. It's a benefit to our members, or he can actually manage your investments for you. So, and he does also sometimes talk to people and say, you know what, investing isn't the thing to do, because you're saving for a house and you want that money within 3 years. You don't want to see that go down in the stock market because you're not able to ride it out over a period of time. So he'll talk with you about your investing timeline, horizons, risk tolerance, all the things. And he may say to you, put this money in a really good CD, and I'm going to recommend one to you instead of a investment. So he's great. We do recommend you check in on your investments about once a year, take a look at them, maybe rebalance or shift, and talk to your advisor, whether that's Dennis or someone else. Also, that it's just a good practice, because then if anything's changed in your life, you can be like, oh yeah, I need to change the beneficiary on that or something, because I have 2 kids now, not one, whatever. So now I do want to get into some of the questions we got ahead of time to make sure that we covered them. I think we did cover how much to keep in the savings account. Hopefully you're keeping 3 to 6 months, starting with maybe 1 month in a saving account, working your way up to 3 to 6 months, depending on your circumstances, versus investing. Paying for college. We did mention a little bit about what my history of saving in a 529. We have a whole YouTube webinar on our YouTube about paying for college. So you can check that out as well. We do offer educational loans here at the credit union and parent loans. But you may choose to get them somewhere else, and that's fine. And I think Ty already covered the benefits of joining a credit union. Okay, here's one, Ty. I have a mortgage about $100,000 at 2.75%. Great rate, friend, whoever has submitted this question. 12 years, and I have an extra $10,000 on hand. Should I pay toward the principal of the mortgage to pay off part of the mortgage? Should I invest it, or should I put it in retirement? And I think it's clear. I would personally say I think it's pretty clear you're not gonna want to pay off a 2.75 mortgage more aggressively.
Yeah,
so
that's
I guess
a very good interest rate.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, should the person invest it or put it into retirement? What do you think, Ty?
I think it's going to kind of depend on their retirement fund and currently how it sort of looks and where they want it to be. Age, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good for this person to like really just take a look. I think it's easy to sometimes forget about your retirement stuff, and so double check what your balances are. Take a look at where you are, kind of where you want to be, and look and see if it would make sense to kind of put more of it in there. But investing could definitely be a good another option as well. Certainly, like either a really nice CD, or depending, you could meet with an investment advisor or do something like that. We can't give investment advice, so I don't want to get too involved. But
yeah. So our team doesn't give investment advice, but Dennis
right.
from the credit union can. So they could certainly call Dennis, make an appointment, and just kind of talk it through with him if that makes sense for you. So
yeah, and then the other thing is like depending on this person's emergency savings, I'm going to say it again, like probably keeping some of that as an emergency or as a liquid way just in case, depending on their current situation, is also probably a really good idea. So there's a couple different things they could do, and I think the steps are going to really kind of depend on what's most important to them and how some of these other things are looking for them.
Yeah. I was in a situation at one point where I had some extra cash like that, and I knew I had home repairs coming up, but they weren't immediate, but they were within the year, like big things I was doing. And I did what's called a CD ladder. We have something on our blog about doing CD laddering where I think I had 15,000. I put 5 in one CD that was coming due in 3 months, one that was coming due in 6 months, one that was coming due in 9 months. So that as I did the portions and had to pay the contractor, I had the money on hand, it would come mature. So, anyone at our branch can help you with opening a CD. We have great promotional rates. So those are options for you to think about. But overall, I think that person's in a good position. I mean, because they do have choices. And that's the example of when you get to a place where you start to have more choices because you maybe are in it takes time for all of us, I think, to get into that place, or most of us, if you didn't start off with a big cushion of some kind from family wealth, but you can get there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I think some of the other questions we hopefully have just covered as we went along. I don't see any new ones in the Q&A. Let me see. Yeah. So good point, Ty. We do not offer investment advice. We don't, my team. The credit union does through Dennis, and you'll get these slides sent to you, so you'll have his email and everything if you want to talk to him or make an appointment. We are also going to send you the survey link. We love your honest feedback about what we can do better. And if there was anything maybe you thought we were going to cover and didn't, if you can let us know that. And yeah, I think that is everything. Thank you to everyone who came today to this webinar. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to think about your financial wellness. And oh, thanks, Ty, for putting the survey link in there. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday. And you took a good step today. If you don't know what to do next, I would suggest GreenPath as a great option. It's
Yeah.
there in the chat. It's also on our website. If you go to the Learn tab on our website, you can easily access GreenPath. You do not need to be a credit union member. So that's always a great step if you don't know what to do next. But
Yeah,
thank you,
totally agree.
everybody.
Yeah.
And thank
Thank
you,
you
Ty.
guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.